We're never going to get to the end of the beer line. We've all been to enough beer conferences. It's my great pleasure on behalf of the board to welcome you to the Wild Things, Barrels Make My Heart Sing. You know, what could be more craft beer than a pun in a title of a talk? My name is Matt Phillips. I've been on the board on and off for the last 20-odd years. And so I guess the first thing we need to do is thank our sponsor, which is Kwantlen Polytechnic. As we all know, they run a fantastic program for brewers. The sponsor and moderator, because she's a teacher there, is Nancy Moore. She's an instructor at Kwantlen Polytechnic. Nancy, and I got to read this. I'm sorry, I'm not going to look up because it's dense. And in a lot of ways, she doesn't really require an introduction. I think we all know her, but it's a really fascinating and dense biography, so I'll just read it. Nancy Moore brewed her first beer over 40 years ago and has been exploring and having fun in the brewing industry ever since. She started in the technical training program for Labatt and worked from one coast of Canada to the other in progressively more senior operations, including being the first female head brewmaster. Adventure beckoned and she moved to Russia to improve technical and quality capabilities across Eastern Europe. She headed up brewing, product, and process development for Interbrew with teams in Korea, Belgium, and Canada. In 2005, she joined the International Beer Supply for Diageo, focusing on Africa, the Caribbean, North America, and Asia. After her return to Canada, she continued her passion for developing the next generation of brewers, working with Kwantlen in the startup of the Brewing and Brewery Operations program, and continues to teach part-time. In 2019, she was astonished by the Guild and the BC Hospitality Foundation, creating the scholarship for women brewers at KPU in her name and being honored with the BC Beer Legend Award. Wow! Do you get anything bigger than that? Anyway, there could be no one more qualified to lead this, so please welcome Nancy.
All right, I'm actually not the lead story here. We're here to listen to these amazing brewers talk to us about what they're doing. But I'm told that I actually have to show a video because Deanne told me to from Kwantlen, and I try and sometimes do what I'm told. So let's see what I'm doing. 1 click, 2 clicks. Oh, there we are. Cutest brewer you've ever seen. And the only thing I can say about that is the really important thing is that we are still doing the math, but I think at the BC Beer Awards, the winners, there was at around over 30% of the winning beers had our students associated with them. And that's really, for us, is our measure of success. But I'm going to introduce you some other people. Okay, stop. Okay, got the right one. It's always good when technology works. First, I'm going to introduce Natasha Peiskar. Natasha's the production manager at Establishment Brewing in Calgary. And so Natasha has over a decade spanning production, education, sales, and hospitality. She manages the production of award-winning beers, including a large mixed culture fermentation barrel program at Establishment. And so her path to production manager started in a home brew shop while simultaneously working as a craft beer sales representative. I don't know how you have time to do both of those. And then her next challenge was as a brand manager and a beer buyer for the National Beer Hall in Calgary. That then led her to come over to the production side. I know some people call it the dark side, but we know it's the bright side. In 2017 with Bomber Brewing, later Toolshed Brewing in Alberta, and then Last Best Brewing and Distilling. Natasha has an advanced Cicerone certification, one of only 2 in Alberta and 156 in the world. That's amazing. And regularly judges professional and home brewing competitions. She is an active member at the Pink Boots Society. And so in 2019, she co-created the hot blend for the Pink Boots Brew Day. And now she is the president of the Canadian chapter of the Pink Boots organization. And I think that's pretty exciting. Natasha, do you want to start? And I don't know if you want to click this or what do you want to do? There. It's up there. You can't see it, so. Can you kind of see it? Do you want to click yourself?
Works. Everyone can hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you for that great introduction. Ooh.
You have control.
Oh, no. Okay. Thank you, Nancy. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for having me. You'll have to bear with me. It's been 24 hours of travel hell getting out of Calgary to make it here today, but I'm really glad I was able to. So I'm just going to go over a quick introduction of our brewery, a little bit about what we do, and then I think we're going to go down the line with that. So Nancy pretty much went over my CV there, and currently I'm the production manager at Establishment Brewing Company. We've been around since 2019. Perfect. Thank you. We were co-founded by a few gentlemen who had been longtime homebrewers, BJCP judges for over a decade. And some laws changed in Alberta, making it favorable to open a craft brewery there. And so they jumped in with both feet and created Establishment in 2019. It's named after what was their kind of home brewing setup in their basement. One of their friends found a sign on a trip called The Establishment, Do Not Disturb, and they said, oh, we're not going to the bar, we're going to the Establishment tonight to try whatever was on tap in the basement from the homebrew setup. So they took that and created the name out of that. They actually really wanted to open up with a wild program beer when they first opened. So they contract brewed 2 barrelfuls of wort and carefully curated that into a very, very, very small batch release that I don't even have in my cellar. I joined them in September of 2020. It's been a really exciting 2 years. So our program, we do like clean beers, and then we have our wild barrel fermentation program. So we have about 90 or so 225-liter oak barrels in-house, 4 puncheons. We don't have fooders yet, but I'm really hopeful. And we also, so basically a little bit about the beer program is we've got golden, red, and brown base in those barrels, and then depending on what we want our end beer to be, we're blending anywhere from 3 to 5 of those barrels to create our one-off products. We're aiming to release about 1 a month right now with the current production schedule, and we're making about 2,500 to 3,000 heck a year on our clean side, and we're making about 8 heck a year on our wild side. So very, very small program, very much a labor of love for us, but we're really excited with where it's going, and we brought some to share with you today, so I'm excited to talk about that. Some of the other things, we are purpose brewing, so we will do lambic-inspired brews for some of the bases. Some of the base that goes into barrel 2 is a saison style, and we're blending back from that. We're finally at the point where we have a couple of 3-year-old barrels in our program, so we're doing goose-style blends as well, which is really exciting for us. I miss anything? I don't think so. I feel like I just slammed through that. The notes were great. Yeah. Talked a little bit about our equipment. So our brew house, 2-vessel, 20-hack brew house, combo mash tun, lauter tun, and BK Whirlpool. And then we have anywhere from 15 to 60 hack fermenters. And yeah, we work with a lot of IBC totes for our blending. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later in the program too.
Is this on? Yeah, sure is.
Okay. Do I really need to introduce Iain? Iain's more famous than me. So Iain graduated in 1993 from UVic with a degree in biochemistry and began his brewing career in quality control with Shaftesbury. We all remember Shaftesbury, please? Okay, good. One of the earliest breweries in North America's current craft renaissance. In 1995, he joined the Mark James Group as the brewer for Yaletown Brewing, and later as head brewer for the whole group, starting a number of breweries up there, including Red Truck Brewing. In 2011, Iain decided to switch his world around and began training as a distiller, and subsequently opened the Yaletown Distilling Company for the same group, where he developed a range of craft spirits, including gin, because I drank gin there. In 2014, Iain co-founded Strange Fellows Brewing Company in Vancouver, and the brewery really is known for a broad range of styles, including barrel-aged sour and wild beers. Iain's made many notable contributions to beer culture in Canada. In 1995, he began brewing one of the first Bavarian-style wheat beers, Hefeweizens, in Canada, and he's well known among beer enthusiasts as one of the earliest brewers in the country producing highly unique sour styles of beer. But he's loved outside of Canada, and that he's judged international brewing awards in the iconic beer cities of Burton-on-Trent and Munich. He's consulted both locally and internationally, including the startup of Swiss microbrewery Trois Dames, as well as the Eau Claire distillery in Alberta.
Thanks, Nancy. Wow, that's, I don't know, it's embarrassing. Oh, no, yeah, but we'll get to the photos. We'll get to them. So, like, yeah, I guess a number of things about our intro is done. I have that as a kind of a first line. I'm Strange Fellows Brewing Company. I'm sure a lot of people know it. Obviously, another East Van brewery, like so many. And yeah, I mean, we do a lot of sour styles, barrel styles. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, these are just like what you were saying, Natasha. This is a small percentage of really what we make, and it's really something we do largely for fun, and because we all secretly just wish other people would like figure it out and love those beers. But I mean, you do those things because it is a labor of love, absolutely. I guess I feel like I'm going to sort of rip through a bunch of areas that sort of pertain to the topic, and then hopefully that will lead. Obviously, Stephane's got similar things, and that'll lead, hopefully to discussion and questions from you guys. So first off, I guess what equipment we use. So actually, can we flip to? Oh, I haven't got it. Yeah, here we go. Is it this one? Okay, let's see. No. Oh, there's. Okay, well, I could go back and see Natasha, but okay, there we go. Those are some good shots. Oh, okay, nice. Yeah. Here we go. First shot. So that's our cool ship. So we do have a cool ship, and we've had that for a few years. Frankly, we haven't used it a whole lot, just a few times. And of course, you can only really use it in the winter because it's a seasonal. Outside temperature has to be pretty chilly for the beer ultimately to not kind of get out of hand with some of the wild stuff. So that's about. Actually, the person you see there is Carly, who's our head brewer and production manager. Just walking around there. That's about, total volume is like 36 hex or something. So a full brew would be 30 hex for us, but we've never done more than 15 and that's about 6 barrels, whatever, for us, Bordeaux style barrels. And we've done a few brews on that. We can talk more about that in a bit. Actually, it's very portable. It's really cool. See, it's got those funny little feet underneath to let cool air sort of blow through the bottom That's Ed Ripley right there, who built it from Summerland. So it's very portable. Actually, I say very. Actually, it really sucks to move it around, but it does move around. So this is us. Well, actually, let me see. I'm getting off topic. So yeah, we use some IBCs too, just like Natasha said. So a lot of times we'll have stuff that's, say, for example, aged in barrels, finds its way into an IBC where fruit is added, and then it further ages. That's a pretty common thing. I'm sure a lot of people here do very similar things. Equipment-wise, of course, yes, we use lots of barrels. And until recently, we actually had a food rub, but we found it quite large and challenging to use because it was 6,000 liters, and we'd be dealing with 6,000 liters of something fairly funky. Can sometimes be difficult calculating releases. You can do Solera method, but we tried all these things, and so we've actually gone entirely back to barrels. And we probably have about 100 barrels. Actually, there's Carly right there sampling. I might as well jump into one thing. What's special about that, again, probably lots of people know, that's one of those little sample ports that Vinny Chirlurzo at Russian River made well known, where you take a little 4D nail and drill a hole. And it's a great way to take a sample off a barrel without upsetting the Brett pellicle, assuming it's something with Brett, on the interface of the beer at the top of the barrel, right? Beer in the atmosphere. That's kind of why I threw that in there. Felt like it was good. So I feel like that. Let's see, where am I? That is, yeah, okay, that's a blending thing later. So that's kind of some of the stuff we do with equipment. Process-wise, of course, there's lots of blending, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, and lots of sensory rationale around that. We bottle condition all of our sour and wild beers, which I think is really in keeping with style, but also keeps those beers fresh and lovely and able to age for a very, very long time, which is really important. Process-wise, also, we do a variety of things. We actually do, when we're doing stuff with the cool ship, we do sort of starch stripping mashes and stuff like that. Turbid mashes, really, which is something traditional in lambic, and we use aged hops, stuff like that. And then culture-wise, we obviously, with those beers, a lot of times we're relying on, there's obviously what falls into the cool ship, and there's also cultures that exist in the oak as well, and that's kind of a big deal. We've also done yeast wrangling, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here who've done that, where we've actually taken autoclaved worts and gone to our local community garden, and there's things you do with that wort. You acidify it and alcoholize it and stuff to try to select the organisms you're looking for. So it's another kind of fun, wild thing we've played with here and there. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of my little rip through on that. Also, we have an interesting thing in our tasting room that allows us. I know we're going to talk a little bit about how things are served. Sometimes it's challenging because we do all these beers in 750 ml bottles, but we like to have them on a list in our tasting room for people to come and have a 12-ounce glass of or whatever. So we actually bought these special, we have a way of pouring single glasses, basically, and repressurizing the bottle. So we have these special stoppers with a valve in the top that clip on, like they're meant for champagne bottles. And we built a little contraption where we can actually blow CO2 in the bottle and repressurize it and store these things in a little fridge. And I know you guys were commenting, that was when we were talking on Zoom last time. I should probably mention that. That's pretty cool. And it makes it really fun in the tasting room. We have this big vintage bottle list, and you can select glasses off, and really you're taking something from a bottle that is bottle conditioned and getting to sample it. Lots more to say, but I'm hoping it comes up in our questions and discussions and stuff. So there you go.
Cool.
Go on.
This is very exciting. We all have mics. I'd like to next introduce Stephane Turcotte, who is the co-founder of Sauvage Brewing in Victoria, BC. Stephane has a certificate in brewing technology from Siebel's and is an advanced cicerone. And I want the explanation for why you never walk alone is at the end of your bio. That may be the first question.
Yeah, that's just my personal obsession with Liverpool Football Club. But okay. Yeah. Anyway, I feel really humbled to be up here, massively underqualified, but also happy to be talking about the things that I like doing for a living. A little bit about my start in brewing. I found myself as a lowly English teacher in South Korea. I met the woman of my dreams, and my homebrewing hobby kind of blossomed over there because there was no craft beer available to me, so I had to make it for myself and my friends, and that turned into the first kind of like American-style craft brewery in the city of Busan, South Korea. So it was kind of a whirlwind, crazy trip, and we really focused on American IPAs, things like that, but my own taste had kind of gone further than that, so I felt like almost I was being a little bit held back having to produce IPA every day. I know, don't look at me like I'm evil. But so when the opportunity came up, I had a couple of friends in Victoria, my hometown, and they said, if you ever end up back in Victoria, let's do something there. So we sold our company in Korea, moved the kids back to Victoria, and we got to kind of open the brewery that I always wished I could open, which is a brewery focused on sour and wild beer. So that's kind of what we did. My first kind of sour beer that started this whole train was Du Sèche de Bourgogne, and it was like the weirdest, most delicious thing I had ever tasted, and so that kind of started this whole trip of trying to learn how to make it. So we decided to open up in Victoria with a really like a dedicated focus on Belgian sour and wild beers. So kind of in opposition to the other two speakers here, last year we did just over 1,300 hectoliter of beer, and of that 90% was sour and wild beer. So people think we do exclusively sour and wild beer. We do a couple of pseudo lagers and a couple of IPAs, but we really do do a lot of sour and wild beer. Most of that production, though, is made up of lacto-focused sour beer, so not the wild stuff that we might be getting into more of today. The way we kind of do it generally is that anything that is lacto-driven, so it's just sour, it's not got the funk to it, we put that stuff into cans with a mobile canner, and then anything that is touched oak generally has Brett with it, and that stuff we put into glass and bottle condition it. Like Iain said, that stuff just ages beautifully when it's bottle conditioned in glass. So we don't do that much of it. The bulk of our production is made up of lacto sour beers. Yeah, we feel incredibly lucky to have enough of a following that we get to continue to make these type of beers and people buy them, and we get to throw any sorts of culinary ingredients at them. That's kind of our wheelhouse. We love adding all kinds of spices and fruits to any of our bases. We started off with the idea that we would make almost lambic, like lambic-inspired beer using turbid mashes and a cool ship. We just got too busy and never got around to it. And we started with 44 barrels, and kind of in opposition to them as well, we have slowly gotten rid of our barrels. It was just too much work, required a forklift that we didn't own, that we had to keep borrowing or renting. And so we now have two 40 hectoliter foeders, and we run them both as Soleras. So one of our foeders contains 40 hectoliters of Saison base, and the other one golden sour base. And the golden sour is in the green bottle that I brought today, our Feu Vert. And we run them as Solera. So what we like to do is take out about 10 hectoliters at a time, blend it possibly with fresh beer, and then package that, and then top up the foeder again, and we maintain a steady amount of about 40 hectoliters in each one. And I'm forgetting things, but I think we will get to them.
We'll try and get to everything. So what we're going to do here is, the first thing is, there's nothing happening after this. So we got permission to keep on talking if you guys have lots of questions. But if you want to, we're supposed to stop at 3:30. So if you want to leave then or at any time, feel free, and then we may just sit here and keep answering questions. I'm gonna start with some, because we wanted to look at what did we think if you were starting out you would want to know, and then what would you would need to know, and then what would you want to know. So we're going to start with some of those questions and then open up to the floor for your questions for this august group of brewers. So I'm going to start actually, sorry, what?
Get into the beers.
Do you want to get in the beers? Has everybody got a beer in their hand?
Some people like politely
Okay.
with their beer.
Let's talk about the beers. Do you want to start?
Sure. So yeah, if you already drank them, that's fine. I see some people just like patiently waiting to get into them. So I brought our Earlton Street. Earlton Street is an annual blend of golden sours that we try to really showcase where our house culture is going. And I do apologize. It's a little bit more turbid than normal because I was on a plane 3 hours ago. So you're getting the full spectrum of the bottle conditioning on that particular beer. But we really like that beer. It's medal award winning for us, and what we're noticing with our house culture is we're getting some really neat kind of rocket candy flavors, beautiful dry finish, just a slight bit of almost like tannic bitterness from the aged hops. And as I said, we're getting to the point now where we have some 3-year-old barrels. So next year's blend is a 1, 2, and 3-year-old showcase coming out at the end of January, if anybody's interested in that and you're out in Alberta.
And you will know if you have that one because it's the golden colored one. We tried to get
Yes.
3 brews of different colors so you didn't get confused.
We were like, how are we going to differentiate this? So yes, the more turbid golden colored one. So enjoy.
Cool. Yeah. The beer I've brought is Reynard. Probably some people have had that already. It's our Oud Brune. It's actually a beer that I started making, in the brew pubs when I was with the brew pubs. So before Strange Fellows, and it's something I've kind of always, for a long time, maybe less so now, but hung my hat on quite a bit. It is, it's barrel aged, of course. It's ultimately, there's a lot of blending that goes into that beer, really trying to get some amount of consistency. I mean, with a lot of these things, consistency isn't really that important. I mean, there's the idea that you do vintages of these beers, so you can kind of, make a deal out of that, so it doesn't really have to be totally consistent. But it's an Oud Brune, and this is kind of sometimes it's kind of a little bit between sort of if you want to differentiate between a Flemish Red and an Oud Brune. Flemish Red maybe being a little more sour. It's sort of somewhere in there. It's made with a multiculture, something that we've actually built up over the years and is very much in the wood of the barrels that it goes into. And typically we'll, when we package it, we'll package about 6 or 7 barrels at a time, and we'll usually put it out once a year. What else can I say about it? I mean, flavor-wise, one of the things I like about it is, I think, in my estimation, it's pretty complex. It's got a good amount of body, but also has some sweetness, which is often a challenge with some of these kind of beers, having some residual sweetness. And it's really nice to have that sweet sour thing. I mean, it's just, human palates just really react well to that. Generally, sweet and sour, it's a great combination. And I feel like it has that. And then there's the sort of some of that malty character you get from some of the dark malt, and that is made with a kind of a turbid mash, not the same exactly regime that we do for our beers that we do with our cool ship. We don't use the cool ship for that at all. But we we usually start fermentation in stainless on that, but there's still a lot of metabolism going on when it goes into the wood and spends the rest of its life in wood. Usually, so what you have will include Oud Brune that's actually more than 3 years old. In that bottle, the samples that you're having now, there's probably some Oud Brune that's 4 or 5 years old as well. So we mess around a lot, and that's just what happens when you're blending. You get certain things going on that you need to pull back on. You want to introduce a little bit of something, but not that much. And so if you have this sort of palette of barrels to choose from, it's really nice because, you can hopefully, there's a lot of levers you can pull, figuratively speaking, to get the end result. But that's that beer, yeah.
And the beer we brought is Feu Vert. In French, it means green light. So kind of the idea behind this beer was to make a foeder-aged golden sour that highlighted green on green on green. So first, the biggest addition to this beer, we met this kind of crazy Kiwi farmer who's actually from New Zealand. Sounds like I'm lying, but he came and took over this derelict Kiwi farm on the Saanich Peninsula, kind of brought it back to life, and then was going around to breweries like us and Whistleboy with cases of kiwis saying, is this something that you might want to use in beer? And of course we said yes. So this is the 3rd year we've made it, and one of the changes that we've made to this beer is that we are actually just blending the kiwis whole. So we used to squeeze the kiwis out of their skins and just age the beer on just the flesh of the fruit, but now we blend them up completely with a little bit of beer, and so it's aged on both the skins and the kiwis. It does add a tannic element. This beer is pretty rippin' sour. I don't know how it compares to the other ones up here, but we don't do really anything to this beer to temper the acidity other than a really light dry hop at the end of it. So this beer has the kiwis, it has a little bit of lime zest, and then a light dry hop at the end to kind of round that out. And like you were saying, this beer starts off in stainless as a clean sour, but that is just to replace the amount of stock that we remove from the foeder. So the original bits of this beer, again, started 3 years ago in the Solera of the foeder. So some of the beer is 3 years old, some of it's 2, I don't know what specific blend it is because it's all just mingling in a 40 hectoliter foeder. Yeah.
We'll get your comments later. Okay, I'm going to start a question. Natasha, with a mixed culture, how important are the relative levels of each organism in the pitching? It's not pitching yeast, in the pitching culture, I guess we would call it. And how do you monitor or manage changes in the relative levels?
I'll probably forget the second part of that question, so you'll have to circle back to it for me. So for us, and this was something maybe I glossed over in our introduction of how we are managing our barrel fermentation program. So we are at the point now where we essentially have kind of a house culture. So we have very mixed culture, lactobacillus and Brettanomyces going on, and the way that we're approaching it now, and this was all grown up from bottled dregs of some well-known, wild producers, Belgian breweries. And the way that we approach it now, that we feel like we have a flavor profile we really like, that's kind of something unique to establishment, is we have a barrel, we like the way that it's going, and this is all by sensory profile. So we're sitting down and doing sensory panels on these barrels based on an inventory we have and making those notes. We'll take that barrel, split it into another one, fill it up with fresh wort to restart it, and then that gets split amongst 8 other barrels or 10 other barrels. So we're filling 12 new barrels at a time, basically. So we're not entirely certain is the short answer in terms of what organisms are doing what. But we are working with a PhD student right now. I can't talk about it too much because it's an NSERC research grant, but what we're doing is sampling our barrels and looking at composition activity of the cultures that are in those barrels, and then using some scientific analysis to basically bring that back to our sensory program and correlate with, okay, is this what our sensory feedback is giving us, and how does that correlate up with some of the chemical compounds that are in those samples? And the second part of the question?
It was really, I think you talked about it.
Okay.
How do you manage differences? And the answer is
sensory.
Yeah.
Occasionally you're going to get barrels that go acetic, and unfortunately those are dampers, and we send those off to have a second life. Either somebody's playing around with some soy sauce stuff locally, and unfortunately the ones that go the way that we aren't liking, we get rid of them.
Cool. Traditionally, the lambic, the goose breweries were from specific parts of Belgium or Brussels or Brussels. So collection and isolation and propagation of yeasts, clearly from your own local environment, they had a great bit of differentiation, a local character to your beer terroir. If we were in the wine industry, I guess we could call it. I don't know, Iain, any advice for others that might like to do this? Any stories of success?
You mean to wrangle
wrangle
yeast?
yeast,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure, I guess. I mean, one thing I touched on was, and we haven't done a lot of it, is specifically just actually going out, in the wild and trying to get cultures. And we actually, there's actually this series of beers we do called Helping Hands. We usually put out about 3 a year. So it's really to raise money for various charities. The first year we did it was We actually got a cease and desist letter on it, of course. But we came to an agreement. These things happen quite a bit, actually, unfortunately. But because the beer was called Backyard, and I think is there a wine up the valley? I don't know. So called Backyard or something. So, we made that beer with a culture. Actually, it was a single yeast culture, actually, single cell, grown from single cell yeast culture. We know in retrospect because of the sample that we had and growing it up afterwards. But something we selected with wort that we had taken to our local community garden. And as I mentioned earlier, you alcoholize it a bit because you're looking for something that's going to be a little bit alcohol tolerant. It's a lot quicker if you start by creating an environment for things that will right away start weeding out what you don't want. So also drop the pH because ultimately you're looking at the pH of 3.5 or 4 or something. So we did that, and funnily enough, actually, in that particular case that I'm thinking of, and that beer, that actually, I'll mention that beer was actually raising money for at-risk youth in Vancouver. The result was weirdly like the same result you'd get from a strain of typical wheat yeast. And it was different enough. Like it had an interesting spicy character to it that I hadn't really experienced before. And we only used it that once, and we actually let it go. We weren't that blown away by it, but it was like you can actually go out in the wild and get something that's not that outlandish. It's not that different from cultured yeasts that you might be able to select elsewise. That's just one anecdote, one story we had. Yeah.
Cool. Anybody got anything else to add to that one? We'll keep on going. Cool. I have heard that wild fermentations and barrel aging have an impact on hops and or create challenges with hopping. And I understand that with the barrel aging and leave it there long enough, the hop aromas and stuff are going to drop. But what other issues arrive? Stephane, I think you said you'd run into this.
Yeah, so we do like to dry hop some of our food or age product that comes out, but a lot of the time we have found that you can get kind of a pickled taste to the hops that I kind of go through phases where I like it and don't like it. To me, it's a unique flavor of dry hopping those things, but it's not necessarily desirable every time. So one of the things we've done to mitigate that is kind of brewing fresh beer, dry hopping that beer, blending in some of our foeder stock, and then dry hopping again quite lightly. So we love that kind of the two flavors together of having a clean beer that's dry hopped being blended with some of our foeder stock. So that's kind of the way we worked around it. We brought some of our sour IPA, and that's the way we make that beer. So that beer is 80% clean IPA, Kvayak IPA in tank, dry hopped. We then blend 20% from our foeder into it. It's amazing how much of a difference just 20%. Suddenly, it's a Brett beer, and we've only added 20% by volume from our foeder. And then we'll give it another light dry hop after that. And we kind of like those characters together, and it works for us. Yeah.
Any other, Iain?
Yeah, I guess if you're talking about hops, in anything, and lots of people will know this automatically, but you have to be really careful with IBUs because you're dealing with, if you're hoping to invite lactobacilli and stuff, they're not going to be able to tolerate. Yes, some will, but by and large, not going to be able to tolerate the isoalpha acids. So keeping the IBUs, down between 5 and 10 is a thing, which is exactly in the case of lambic. Lambic breweries, they're using aged hops, usually between 1 and 1.5, 1 and 1.5 alpha, and keeping the IBUs somewhere between 5 and 10, which is very typical. And there's other qualities coming from the hops other than obviously just isoalpha acids that are important. Preservative qualities, as a matter of fact, as well. And it's kind of like when I, as a hobbyist for years, used to make cider, and there's this thing called a partial kill where when you're using sulfites, and you can knock, if you're relying on wild cultures, but you can kind of knock back what's there with a low level sulfite addition, but allow certain wild cultures to exist and ultimately make a nice product, because what's there, if you don't do that, can ruin what you've got. And it's similar. What I'm trying to say is there's a parallel. It's similar when you're using hops in lambic, aged hops, low that yield low IBUs, kind of things like that. But there's this relationship, obviously, for if you're trying to invite lactobacillus, that's it.
Cool. So what I'm curious about is there anything significantly different in the collection and storage methods and times, et cetera, that you use for mixed cultures versus Saccharomyces culture yeast? Natasha, can you take that one on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, for us, you know, we've kind of got this house culture going now, so it lives in the barrels, and so we're not necessarily collecting and repitching. We're using the method where we'll kind of restart it with some fresh wort, and then spread that amongst some barrels that are also going to get some more fresh wort. But we've brought in a lot of Brettanomyces. We joke that we kind of have the alpha Brett covered because there's so many. There's like MD. They're all over the place now. And, you know, we are introducing some of those. And with those ones, we try and get them as close to pitch as possible. We're not keeping them around the brewery too much. We want them to go to work right away because they tend to obviously take a little bit longer to produce the profile that we're looking for. So sometimes we'll get fresh pitches from yeast companies for that. But other than that, we're maintaining in-house.
So Stephane, I'm going to throw this one down to you, but I suspect everybody might have an opinion on this one. The barrel aging process, it's key both for, you know, the wild cultures and, you know, so for them to do their thing, whatever it is they do in there over time, and maybe for some flavor contribution from the barrels. Can you share? What have you chosen for? You talked a bit about it already, about fermentation and aging, and why you settled on those. How big a factor are those choices on how your beer is going to end up?
Well, we would always choose neutral oak for these type of beers. We're not looking for a lot of flavor from what was in there before, so mostly choosing wood that's been used in wine programs, in white or red wine. For us, we found with the kind of regular size barrels, like the 225, 250 liter mark, they almost moved too quickly for us for the amount that we could package and sell. So it was just that kind of surface area to volume ratio meant that they were kind of turning acetic like almost too quickly, and they were developing too fast for us to package and get out the door. That's why we ended up making the turn towards fooders. We just found that with that surface area to volume, things were just slowed that much further down that we could sit on it for a year and not have it go acetic and not be dumping barrels left, right, and center. So we the reason we did that was not really for flavor, but just for the speed of the development of these beers.
All right, I got to ask this question as someone that used to teach fermentation and microbiology. Frankly, what you're doing terrifies me. But so in a brewery where you've got multiple yeast cultures, you know, cross-contamination is always a brewer's nightmare, or it should be. But with wild cultures, this is really, really critical. So what measures have you guys put in place, or would you recommend to eliminate or reduce the possibility of cross-contamination inside your brewery?
I'm not the right person. My brewery has been compromised, so.
Well, I'll say something about that. I mean, the first thing that would freak the crap out of me would basically be, how are you going to package it? What equipment are you going to use? So we have a little mahine that we do our 750 ml bottles on, and we just keep it to that. That stuff doesn't really get near our canning line. So, and I'd consider that to be incredible. Like, that's the first thing. And then when it comes, like if, you know, this obviously is lab ways. You know, you'll know Nancy. Lynn's cupric sulfate media is great for, at least if you're looking for Brett. You know, in your whatever other beers you're making, you can use that to keep on top of sampling, you know, active fermentations and stuff, and looking for that. And then thirdly, if you've used something where you've had, you know, one of these, you've had Brett or whatever in it, a stainless vessel or something. We have this thing around the brewery we call nuking tanks, basically. So really, I mean, the key thing when you're cleaning for Brett, I'm sure lots of people know, but it makes biofilms. Caustic isn't ultimately really going to take care of all of it. You need acid. So first you do like we'll do very hot caustic cycle, hot and long on a tank. So it might be like 95 degrees or 90 degrees or something, and then we'll do hot acid as well, and then we'll soak all the gasket. Well, actually, I wonder if we still do. We did have a separate set of gaskets for a long time that we used. I'm not sure where we are with that at the moment, but typically that stuff soaks in another bucket of acid overnight, and then is sanitized and all that. You just kind of do the best you can. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary, and these things are bound to sort of come around the corner once in a while.
Hopefully before it hits package.
True.
For our program, we're really concerned about packaging, obviously, and touch points as well. So we have a whole separate set of gaskets, hoses, stainless parts, gloves. If you're working on wild side that day, typically you won't work on the other side. We haven't let any of those cultures hit our stainless yet. It's all in wood. The closest is like an STA positive, which again, we nuke with 3% caustic, 2% acid, and ATP swabs is something that we're using as well. But yeah, our bottling setup is a 6-head gravity filler, and we have a specific kegging setup off of that as well. And all of our totes, everything on wild side, if it's wild side, you're typically only dealing with that in a particular day.
Cool. Now, not that I can see who's up there, but are there any questions from the floor? And Ken, are you going to come and run up and down these things, or do you want me to do it? I can't even see who's up there. Anybody got any questions? Oh, there's one over here. That one's down low. I can get to this one.
So as sour brewers, I know you guys probably care a fair bit about THP, but I know the average beer drinker doesn't know what that is. How much do you worry about it, and how do you control it?
You want me to go? Yeah, well, I hate it. And I don't know, I think people, it's like a lot of things. People can't identify it, they don't know what it is, but if you have a beer with a lot of THP, it doesn't matter how much of a novice you are, it's probably kind of a bit shitty. So THP sucks. It's about oxygen, of course. It's made by Brett, and I think also I read at some point Lacto produces THP, but someone else could correct me. I don't know. But, it's all about oxygen as well, ingress, and so typically, wood's a thing. I mean, one thing that we do is with our barrels, we don't currently use barrel wax. I know people do that, but all of our barrels get typically wetted down once or twice a week completely. Like we're not in a cellar down in a high humidity cellar. I mean, we're in a brewery, so it's pretty humid, but so we wet the barrels down all the time, and then we also monitor them a lot. And I think that actually makes quite a difference. Then on top of that, of course, bottle conditioning is huge for cleaning up THP. We don't know enough about it yet, but some strains are better than others. And we found at times, like actually, there was a creek I was thinking of bringing, which we didn't bring. Instead, I brought the Ode Brun. But that was a beer that we were all quite nervous going to package with because it had some real discernible THP. Holy cow, it just cleaned right up. And that was a great example of how bottle conditioning can kind of take care of that through the reaction. So I care about it, and I don't like it, and I'd rather it wasn't there.
Okay, who else had their hand up? Oh. I'm going to get all my cardio in today.
Hi. So when you're doing the sensories and you come across a flavor that's like unexpected or just not what you expected to be there, is it a eureka moment where you're like, oh, holy shit, this is great? Or are you already thinking, we need to blend this out, or what have we done wrong?
I can start on that one, I guess. Yeah. We have a pretty robust sensory program. What we focus on a lot at the beginning is training. A lot of folks don't have like the right words to put to the, like the adjectives or that they might be getting. So we focus on that a lot. We can sometimes tell when something's kind of starting to round the corner the wrong way that we don't want, but we'll typically leave it and see how it develops and see if, that one particular aspect won't clean up. The one that we've found is if it's starting to go acetic, either it needs to be blended and used right away, because it will just keep going to the point where we just can't use it.
Okay, I've just been told we have 5 minutes, so someone that wants to ask a question's got to look really enthusiastic. I can see you down there. Whether or not I can get to you is another question.
I had two really quick ones. One, can you explain like the cool ship process? And the second question is, I wrangled my first yeast and it tasted like dog shit and paint thinner. So like what, just recommendations if you're trying to wrangle to like get your first one going, really?
I don't know about the dog shit part, but the paint thinner might be, was it maybe, ethyl acetate, like that's like, nail polish remover, which is what a lot of people would, solventy kind of thing. And that's actually not bad. I mean, there you go. That's like a blending thing. I mean, a little bit, red wine, a lot of times you don't know it's there, but there's, there can be some ethyl acetate and that, at low levels, that's just fruity, right? So if you're fortunate enough to have a whole bunch of stuff to draw upon, again, that's that whole palette thing, you can control what it is, the outcome is. What was the earlier part of the question? Cool ship. Yeah, cool ship. I don't know the process or anything. Well, really, it's just, the Belgians and I guess other low countries, places, historically use cool ships to cool wort instead of a heat exchanger. Interestingly, my understanding is at some point they moved to heat exchangers, not plate and frame like we have today, something a bit different where wort cascades down the outside of these big coils. And then they actually moved back to cool ships because I think there's some history there because they obviously they liked what they got out of it. But the process for us is really you're cooling wort. You're hoping, you're hoping good things fall in. I mean, the truth is, with lambics and other similar beers, the big culture load is coming from the wood. Like, although that said, like we all don't know everything, and I wonder, like since we've been using our cool ship, and none of those beers are out yet, so we're still waiting. And honest to God, they show really amazing promise. Like it's really like I was really skeptical, and I'm kind of not. I'm like, wow, this is going to be like one of the better things we've done, in wood. So so really it's a cooling vessel. Before that, though, of course, yeah, it's all about start stripping mashes and turbid worts and that kind of thing. So and typically we rest in there overnight is what we do. So go in the afternoon, the following morning early, someone will come and pump it out.
Is that like 12 hours, give or take?
Yeah, maybe give a little, yeah.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the geometry of your cool ship and the overnight temperatures that you're looking for. You really want consistency there with your overnight temperatures, and it depends. But yeah, typically 12 to 18 hours.
And that's the best way to end, because my students tell me I never actually answer a question without saying it depends. And this is probably the classic part of brewing where it really depends. So thank you all for coming and letting us geek out about beer. Thank you to our incredible brewers here for sharing their knowledge and their interests with you. And I'm sure if you found them with a beer in your hand, they would probably answer even more questions. So it's beer. Isn't it beer time? Ken, can we have a beer now?
That was awesome. Let's big round of applause for everyone. Thanks.